Morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today to our Lynn Cancer Institute updates. We'd like to keep you in the know in 2024. We're very grateful to have you all with us today and to learn from our very own oncology clinical dietitian, Brandy Hyatt. Brandy will be educating us today on, quote, "From diagnosis to thriving, the powerful role of nutrition in breast cancer treatment through survivorship." And as I said in my note, the information that we get, especially from our nutrition series, is beneficial for everyone. At the Lynn Cancer Institute, we believe that nutrition is the basis of healthy living for our patients and survivors, as well as prevention for all of us. Your Zoom's going to be muted during her presentation, so we invite you to please take notes during her presentation. And any questions that you might have, you can put them in the QA box or the chat box, and Brandy will be able to see those and address them at the end of her presentation. So thank you all for coming today, and I'd like to introduce Brandy Hyatt, our oncology clinical dietitian. Welcome, Brandy.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Jan, and thank you everybody for joining me today. Today, we will be discussing the spectrum of breast cancer nutrition and exercise, covering from prevention through treatment and all the way through survivorship. So thanks for joining me on this journey today. As far as our agenda, we really want to dive into how nutrition and exercise plays a role in prevention, treatment. We're going to discuss emerging research, a lot of the myths and the truths that I receive questions on every day. We're going to dive into those, and we're going to wrap it up with survivorship. So basically, that's how I'm classifying survivorship in this lecture, is when you're finished with treatment. So when we talk about breast cancer prevention, as a healthcare practitioner, my focus, especially here at the Lynn Cancer Institute, is really preparing my patients for treatment, helping them get through treatment, and then helping them navigate after their treatment is finished. And I really, I found when I was doing this lecture that I don't do a lot of focus on prevention. But what can a patient do, or what can a person do in the community before they end up walking through my doors here at Lynn Cancer? So when we talk about prevention, we divide up our risk factors into those that we have control over, so those that are modifiable, and those that we don't have a lot of control of are non-modifiable risk factors. Our modifiable risk factors are things like alcohol. We can stop or definitely decrease the amount of alcohol that we do take in. Our weight. So are we overweight? Are we underweight? What's going on there? So those are things that we can control. Physical activity. Are we engaging in exercise every day, every other day? Not at all. And then what are our general nutrition habits? Are we including our fruits and vegetables every day, our lean proteins? Those are some of the things that we can address and we can change. Of course, our non-modifiable risk factors are going to include our genes. We can't really control our genetic makeup and our race. And some of those risk factors can contribute to our risk of getting breast cancer. Other things that we talk about, not so much today because our focus is on nutrition and exercise, but in the prevention space, also breastfeeding, not smoking, limiting the use of hormonal medications, limiting exposure to pollution. There's a lot of things out there that we have control and we don't have a lot of control of. But again, the nutrition and exercise is going to be really, really key. I thought it was really interesting, a recent statistic or a recent study that was posted by ASCO, American Society of Clinical Oncology. They surveyed over 2,000 females here in the US, and it just blew my mind that less than 30% of the females really were aware that a healthful diet can lower the risk of developing breast cancer. I think as practitioners, we do a fantastic job with getting the word out about getting your mammogram and doing your self exams, but I don't think we do such a great job of getting the word out about the importance of nutrition and exercise. So if any of you guys were able to attend the Breast Bazaar a couple of weeks ago, I did a small talk there, and I also developed a handout that I wanted to summarize 5 takeaways and that you can take away from this lecture and at that point the Breast Bazaar that you can do. There's something in this handout that you can change or enhance to what you're already doing. Now, spoiler alert, this handout, although we have it in the prevention section, really carries over throughout the whole scope of breast cancer. So whether you're in prevention or we're going through treatment or we're in the survivorship space, all of these tips are important. They spread across the gamut, okay? So while we review them, I want you to really be considering what it is that you can take away and that you can change today. So the first one is eating well. So of course, the highlight of nutrition, but what does that mean? What does it mean to eat well, to eat healthily, to eat healthfully? So the way I categorize or the way that I summarize it as a registered dietitian is to make sure that we get enough protein, so high protein, low inflammation causing foods, and being carbohydrate friendly. So we focus on inflammation or low inflammatory foods because what the research does show us is that chronic diseases such as cancer, heart disease, diabetes really thrive in an environment full of inflammation. So foods such as processed foods, our lunch meats, our sugar added foods, a lot of our junky foods, those are really going to increase inflammation within our bodies. So those are the foods that we need to decrease so that we can lower that risk of inflammation. So we do want to eliminate those, but we don't want to eliminate any of the big food groups like our carbohydrates, our protein, and our fats. And we'll dive a little bit deeper into more specifics about what we do want to include. But as a general recommendation, following the Mediterranean diet is very powerful. And there's a lot of research, a lot of literature on the Mediterranean diet and its benefits. So definitely look at that and how you can enhance your daily intake focusing on the Mediterranean diet. The second big tip is making sure that you get regular exercise, whether you're in the prevention space, treatment space, or survivorship space. I cannot stress it enough, and I'm going to talk about it several more times throughout this lecture. But the recommendation for exercise is 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity with additional 2 days per week of resistance training. So that's your light weights, your resistance bands, your body weight exercises. The third big tip, as far as a takeaway, is maintaining a healthy gut. And I'm going to show you some of the emerging research a little bit later. So a lot of stuff going on about your gut, leaky gut, healthy microbiome. What can you do today? Well, you can definitely increase your fiber. The recommendation for fiber is 25 to 35 grams of fiber per day. And think about probiotics. So whether you want to include fermented foods or supplement with a probiotic pill or liquid, those are things that you can do to really make sure that your gut is becoming more balanced. Maintaining a healthy weight is our next tip. A BMI, so that's a body mass index, less than 25 is recommended. So getting as close to that as possible, even if you're in the BMI of 25.1 to 30 range, it's really about trying to get it closer to 25, okay? So that's how we sort of measure the way a lot of the studies are based on BMI as well. So we know that a higher BMI gives you a higher risk for breast cancer. And our fifth big tip or takeaway is alcohol. So decreasing the alcohol. Alcohol is very inflammatory. So again, as we reflect back to the first tip with nutrition, we really want to decrease all of the inflammation within our body because we don't want to have that special environment that will help promote any of our chronic diseases. So even though I really like to focus on a healthy diet and exercise during treatment, sometimes there are some side effects that get in the way that make us alter our nutrition recommendations. So if you're in that space where you're getting treatment and you're experiencing any of the side effects, such as, let's say, nausea and vomiting. So I'm going to kind of segue a little bit from the healthy Mediterranean diet, and I'm going to make sure that you're trying to include ginger because that helps settle the stomach. I'm going to make sure that you're going to eat smaller meals more often. They might be a little bit more carbohydrate or more comfort food heavy, but that's okay because we just want to make sure that you're not really struggling with that nausea. If you're experiencing any of the bowel changes, such as diarrhea or constipation, I might take away some of the fruits and vegetables because some of the fruits can cause some more diarrhea, some can constipate us. So we really kind of have to maneuver around that. There are other foods such as maybe coffee or chocolate or maybe even milk-containing products that might contribute to the diarrhea as well. So we have to kind of switch gears a little bit with what we're recommending. Loss of appetite could be a side effect as well once you're on treatment, as well as weight gain and weight loss. I do often see more so weight gain whenever I have a breast cancer patient on treatment with some of the chemos. So that is something that we work on, not necessarily during treatment. We might try to streamline what you are eating, but definitely after treatment, we do have programs that we can help you with the weight gain. So again, just sort of reiterating, we of course we want to start off with a healthy diet, choosing the healthier foods, but if we have to switch a little bit during treatment, then it's okay. Okay, give yourself grace that it's okay if we don't eat perfectly at any point of the breast cancer spectrum. I do have meal plans that I've developed based on the Mediterranean lifestyle that focus on decreased inflammation, maintaining protein, and carbohydrate friendly. So if you are interested in any of these handouts that I have posted, just shoot me an email and I'll make sure that you get them. Staying active, there it is again, our exercise component. I'm going to sprinkle that, like I said, all throughout. So, and I hope while we're talking about everything and I'm repeating myself, that you are sort of internalizing what I'm saying and thinking about how you can make activity work in your lifestyle. Now, I really get excited about research. My whole practice is based on research. As a registered dietitian, we can only talk about where the research is. Where's there evidence and what we are saying? Okay. So I get really excited about research. And this being October, October being Breast Cancer Awareness month, I'm sure everybody has seen all the different walks and the different fundraisers. I'm always really curious and how much of what we're raising goes towards research, because that's really where we're going to get to the nitty gritty and find out how we can help our patients the most. And I don't know if anybody on the call participated in the Strides Walk this past weekend, but I was curious what the ACS, the American Cancer Society, how much they contribute towards research, because I know that they raise a lot of money. So I looked up on their website and I was very pleased to see that since 1946, they have invested more than $5 billion in research grants, which I think is amazing. And then they had another fact that in 2022, they invested 145 million in cancer research. So this is important. Now, the ACS did not list specific research grants that they had invested in or supported, but the World Cancer Research Fund did. And so that's another really great research space that is where I actually pulled the majority of these research article, these studies from the 8 studies that we'll talk about a little bit. So, but it's interesting, love research, and I'm excited that I can share some of the research with you guys today. Now, that being said, though, when we do talk about research and nutrition, it can be a challenge because with research and nutrition, we kind of step on that gray area where is it ethical, is it not ethical? So there's only certain things. We have a very narrow space that we can do our research, and there's a lot of challenges. So the majority of our research that that we see typically comes from food recalls, which I don't know about you guys, but I can barely remember what I ate yesterday. So although the food recalls are definitely streamlined to help spur your memory and everything, but they can be very subjective. Okay, so we have that, and then we also have blood samples and studies on human and mice samples. But like we'll learn in the soy example later, when I talk about the soy myth, mice don't really process soy like humans do. And so that is the reason why we have the soy myth, is because all the studies were done in mice and they don't really break down soy the same way. So as you can see, we have a lot of challenges, but that doesn't mean that we don't have a lot of good data as well. But I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew about that. Some other categories for emerging research, so where the research is really trying to look at is what happens with mortality rates, with recurrence rates, and prevention rates. So that's how we're really quantifying a lot of the data. So the first study, and I think this is probably my most exciting one that I found, deals with the gut microbiome. And I'm sure, you've seen probiotics, you've seen fermented food, and you've probably heard of leaky gut and seen all sorts of stuff about what having a healthy gut will do. And the research is ongoing, and I just know that we're going to likely find a lot more out of, or learn a lot more out of having a balanced gut. So, but the exciting research that I saw, so there were 3 articles from 2021 and 2 out of 2023. So the gut microbiome actually releases substances to help regulate estrogen. So in our breast cancer survivors, especially if you're estrogen receptor positive, that's really impactful. Women who were diagnosed with breast cancer and had previously, taken in a vegetarian or Mediterranean diet had really nice biodiversity. So that means in their gut they have a lot of microbes, and they're really good bacteria really surging in there. So, and then when they had that, they also had lower estrogen levels, which is interesting. And then this one I think is very nice. Women with triple negative breast cancer that responded to the 2 different chemotherapies listed there, if they had a higher biodiversity of the gut microbiome, they adapted to the medication better, and they had less of a relapse. So it's so amazing. And then the mice models, they were treated with the Doxo as well. If they had a high fat diet and a low fiber diet, so we need a lot of fiber. Remember that 25 to 35 grams of fiber that I mentioned previously. So if these mice had low fiber, high fat, they showed reduced drug efficacy. So interesting. So then the second research study really kind of kind of ties into my soy myth that I'll talk a little bit about later as well. But really looking at what phytoestrogens do. And so we have two types of food, more or less, for the study that we looked at for the phytoestrogen content, and that's our soy and our flaxseed. So if you look at the diagrams or the pictures of the molecules, they're very similar. So to estrogen. Okay, so a phytoestrogen is a plant-based or plant chemically looking, resembling estrogen. Okay, so the top diagram is our estrogen receptor. Okay, our estrogen, estradiol, and our estrogen receptor. I'm trying to not get too technical with everybody, but you can see the phytoestrogen in the middle picture and the bottom, the lignans or the flaxseed, are very similar. So what that means is they can bind to the estrogen receptors. Okay, and so if you're eating a soy food and the soy breaks down and it breaks into this phytoestrogen and it will bind to an estrogen receptor. So in the past, we thought that possibly it was making, if your breast cancer is estrogen receptor positive, we were worried that by eating the phytoestrogen, it would promote the tumor or the cancer cell growth. But what we know now is that the soy is too weak. It's not going to do that. It's going to bind to the receptor, but it could actually be protecting and prohibiting the estrogen that's floating around the body from binding to that receptor. So soy is good, bottom line. We can eat soy. And we'll talk a little bit more about what kinds of soy. But the study went on to describe some more of the recent research from 2023 that with the ingestion of 60 milligrams per day of soy, so that broke down to 2 to 3 servings of soy, there was a decrease by 26% recurrence rate in our postmenopausal estrogen receptor positive survivors. And our mortality rate decreased by 25% in our estrogen receptor positive survivors. So including that soy is beneficial on many levels, but also could help with reducing recurrence and mortality. Our third study talks about the plasma carotenoids, vitamin C, and the risk of our breast cancer. And basically, those females that had high levels of these antioxidants had a lower risk of breast cancer. So what does that look like? So our alpha carotene, our beta carotene, you've probably heard of. We find that, our big vegetables, our carrot. But if you look at the 4 pictures on the bottom, they're all orange and yellow. And so by including those vegetables and fruits, the orange and the yellows, you're helping to decrease your risk of breast cancer. Dietary fat. And so, although we can't draw a direct line to eating the bad fat, which is our saturated fat. So there's 3 types of fat. There's saturated, which is our bad fat. And then there's unsaturated and monounsaturated fats. So we can't draw an A to B line with eating a lot of fat, but we do know that eating a lot of our bad fat will be stored as energy, and then that energy will cause our fat stores to increase and cause us to gain weight. So although it's not a direct line, it is a very important line because remember, we want to try and maintain our body mass index less than 25 or get it as close to that as possible. So decreasing our saturated fat will help us do that. And where does saturated fat come from? Mostly our animal products. So if you were to eat a steak and it has that visible chunk of fat, if you were to drink whole milk, that has a lot more saturated fat than, say, skim milk or reduced fat milk. So we just want to streamline that really bad fat that really doesn't do anything for us anyways. Vitamin D. Now, I included this slide. There really wasn't anything conclusive with this particular study, but vitamin D is really important, and I really feel strongly that we are going to have a lot better recommendations or like concrete research coming out of vitamin D and its link with breast cancer. Um, and there's lots of ongoing studies, but I kept this slide in here because I just want to remind everybody to get tested for vitamin D just to make sure that if you are low, at least you can talk to your physician about supplementing and getting your levels back up. I don't know exactly what will be the outcome, but I know that it's going to be something important with vitamin D. Here's our exercise slide again. So this was our 5th study, just really focusing on the exercise. Now, the 150 minutes per week focuses on moderate intensity exercise. And what that means is getting your heart rate up. Okay, so for me, my heart rate would probably need to be between probably 120 and 150. So I'm moving at a good pace. I'm really I'm not necessarily out of breath when I talk, but I am moving at a good pace. Or you could consider 75 minutes per week of vigorous exercise, and that's really getting your heart rate up into what that I consider the fat burning zone. So for me, that would be over 155 would be my heart rate. So, but if you have never exercised and that scares you and the thought of like getting your heart rate up, that's fine. You'll work up to it. Start with a slow walk. Do whatever within your boundaries to do, but just do something and do resistance training as well. The 6th study, I think the 6th or 7th study, talked about wearable technology. So all of our Garmin's and our Apple Watches that track our activity. What the study showed is that the females that did wear the wearable technology had more of an increase in their exercise engagement, which I think is really important. So maybe I don't know why, maybe because they felt accountable, to their watch that they needed to. I know I get super excited when my watch does the little burning circle and it says, "Oh, you completed your activity for the day." I think that's really fun. So whatever it is that can motivate you, but I think these wearable watches that track all of your activity are really inspiring and motivating as well. So something to consider. Here's our fantastic Mediterranean diet. So, a lot of it's almost like a repeat of the other study that talked about the carotenoids and the vitamin C rich foods. That's really what the Mediterranean diet is. It doesn't have barely any saturated fat, and it's full of fiber and carotenoid rich foods. All of our vegetables, it really has the whole rainbow of colors from all of our different fruits and vegetables included. It does include fish twice a week, so we're really, hiking up the omega-3 fatty acids, which are really part of the healthier fats versus the saturated fats that we know aren't that great for us. So those were the main research conclusive research that we've found. And I wanted to highlight some of the other studies that are going on at the World Cancer Research Fund, just because I think it's really interesting to see what's going on. And even though they haven't finished these studies, but just to know that there's something there. There's something there that we know is probably going to be helpful for us down the road. Okay, so they're looking at body composition and chemotherapy toxicity. So if we have a BMI greater than 35 or greater than 25, how is that going to affect our reaction to our chemos and our immunotherapies? So that's always interesting. Sleep patterns, if we have erratic sleep patterns, what is that doing to us? Is that increasing our stress hormones? Like it's doing so much. Yoga, the benefits of yoga, body mass index in childhood, and linking that to premenopausal risk. So our children, our girls are a little bit more overweight than they used to be, and a lot of them are starting their periods earlier. So is that kicking them into menopause earlier as well? So that's a very interesting study. Short-term fasting and chemotherapy. I do often get questions about fasting and chemotherapy. Not a lot of evidence out there, but they are looking at it. And then a diet that is rich in polyphenols. So that's going to be that's going to be in our fruit and vegetable and carbohydrate space. Just more foods, more nutrient dense foods. So the next topic I want to dive into is our big myths. So how does nutrition and exercise affect our sugar and our soy myths? So pretty much every day I get asked the question, does sugar feed cancer? Because a patient will see it online, their friend will tell them, don't eat sugar, it goes to the tumor. Just to settle your mind, when you eat sugar, like simple sugar, it does not go straight to the tumor and make it bigger, okay? So I want to try and break this down as simply as possible. And I do have a handout that will describe it as well. So if you need more explanation, just let me know as well. Basically, there are two types of sugar, or sugar is divided into two categories. So there's complex carbohydrates, and then there's our simple carbohydrates. So all carbohydrates are broken down into glucose, or simple sugars. The difference is if you have a complex carbohydrate like your bread, your rice, your pasta, your fruits, your starchy vegetables, they're encapsulated by fiber, phytochemicals, antioxidants, sometimes protein. So all the nutrients that really make that carbohydrate advantageous. If you have a simple sugar or simple carbohydrate like a piece of cake or ice cream or a cookie or soda, like that doesn't have a whole lot of nutrients around it. So it's going to be broken down and absorbed in your stomach super fast. So when it's absorbed super fast, the insulin secreted from your pancreas will try to gobble it up and bring it into the cell as quickly as possible. So by doing that, it does it so quickly that you still have all these other hormones going, I'm hungry, I'm hungry. So you keep eating, okay? And you keep eating and you keep eating all these excessive calories that are eventually going to be stored, okay? And it doesn't just get stored as muscle or something else, it's going to mainly be stored as fat. Okay, and that's where we get into trouble, because if we have too much fat, or our adipose tissue is what we classify it as, then that's the space that a lot of hormones, that a lot of deregulation, there's a lot of stuff going on there. And that's actually what's more contributory to the cancer over time, versus just eating a cookie and saying I've done such damage. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Simple sugars, it's not that you can't have them, it's just that it's not something that's going to nourish your body anyways. It's not a quality food. It's not going to do much for you, you know, but you can have it, but definitely just make sure that you're getting the complex carbohydrates throughout the day at some point, because just maintaining your lifestyle on that simple sugar is just not good in the long run. So looking a little bit closer at the fat tissue, which is really where that extra sugar is going, we've known that we do need fat. We need to ingest the good fats, and then we need some fat stores on our body. We've always thought that, fat is mainly just for releasing energy and for storage and providing insulation for our organs. But what we've learned more recently is that it's actually an organ. Like fat is an active organ in our endocrine system. So that system that really regulates all the hormones and all the things that are going on, fat plays a role in that. So huge role, not just protecting organs, it's really part of a whole big system. So, and more specifically with this adipose tissue, this abdominal fat linked area tissue, there are 3 different cells, and each of the different cells, whether it's white or beige or brown, have different functions. But together, the main things that I like to point out what the adipose tissue does and how it affects us is that it helps in regulating hunger and satiety. So whether you're feeling those feelings of hunger or you're feeling full, the adipose tissue kind of works indirectly to help with that. It helps regulate the glucose and the cholesterol. So those that are floating, those molecules that are floating around in your bloodstream when we're measuring your glucose or your cholesterol, adipose tissue has a role in that. Maintaining insulin sensitivity. So if we're releasing so much insulin from the pancreas, sometimes that's hard. Over time, we become desensitized to the insulin. And so the fact that the adipose tissue has a role in that is really intriguing. And then, of course, for my breast cancer survivors, that whole aspect of metabolizing sex hormones. Okay, so your progesterone, and then also our androgens. So lots of stuff going on with the adipose tissue, and this sort of gives a little bit more technical explanation, so I'm not going to go too far into it. But again, just seeing what, if you're overweight or you have a lot of extra of that abdominal fat, what is it affecting? It's affecting insulin, it's affecting estrogens, it's affecting inflammation, and it's also affecting the androgens and progesterone. A lot of stuff going on that really kind of but it's easier to say sugar feeds cancer than it is to really break down the science. So, and that's a lot more, sexy to say sugar feeds cancer than really look at the science. So, hopefully we can debunk that myth now. Can I eat soy is my other big myth that I hear every day. Again, how I explained earlier about the phytoestrogen and how it resembles estrogen in the body and it can bind to the estrogen receptor, but it's too weak. It's not going to promote cancer cell growth. It's going to actually potentially block estrogen from binding and promoting your natural body's estrogen from binding and promoting cancer growth. We do want to focus on more of the whole sources of soy. So looking at your edamame, your soy milk, your tofu, and your tempeh. I did actually just read an article this morning regarding soy, and it basically reiterated this, gave me a little bit more science behind it, but also said that soy powders are okay. You can include soy powders. The reason we usually don't like to endorse those is because we see a lot of the soy powders or the soy isolates additives, which is the other little circle there on the screen. We see those in more processed foods, and we just don't want to encourage or endorse our processed or our ultra processed foods, which opens up a whole other can of worms and a whole new avenue of research that's coming out about the bad effects of ultra processed foods. So now we've talked about prevention, we've talked about treatment, and now we're just going to segue into the survivorship space. Basically, we're going to carry our same recommendations as we had before on that pink handout that had the 5 tips, all of the things that you can do. But sometimes when we're done with treatment, our physician will put some of the breast cancer survivors on aromatase inhibitors or our SERMs, so to help reduce the circulation of estrogen that may be in the body and provide an increase in decreasing recurrence rate. Okay. So, but some of the side effects with the aromatase inhibitors and the SERMs include bone loss, fatigue, muscle pains, and weight gain. And so here are some of the things that you can do from the nutrition and the exercise side that will help you get past some of those or help minimize any of those potential side effects. For bone loss, the weight-bearing exercise, that resistance training twice a week at a minimum, that's going to be very helpful. Calcium and vitamin D supplementation, there's that vitamin D again. We see it across the spectrum, but definitely discuss with your physician. Fatigue is also very common with the AIs and the SERMs. We want to make sure that we're staying hydrated, we're getting adequate amounts of protein, we're staying physically active, and just overall eating that healthy, that Mediterranean diet full of fiber and fruits and vegetables as much as possible. Muscle pain, sometimes potentially the vitamin D supplementation might mitigate that, possibly, but do discuss that with the physician. And then, of course, weight gain. We do have a weight loss intervention program here at Lynn that only includes our breast cancer survivors. And we do see a trend with the potential to gain weight with the AIs and the SERMs. We don't know exactly why, but we are trying to help, at least decrease the amount of weight gain that a breast cancer survivor will experience. So reach out if you have been treated within the past year and you need some help with the weight gain. But basically that, again, focusing on healthy eating and the physical activity. And then just a few takeaways, again, just to wrap up, just keeping it on your mind all the time, the things that you can change. What can you take away today that you can change? Can you get your BMI less than 25 or at least work towards that direction? Get alcohol in moderation, but really, what does that look like in your space? What can you do? If you don't, if you do drink a couple of glasses of alcohol every day, how can you decrease that? Your plant-based diet, how can you include more of that in your daily base? And maybe it's just adding a salad every day or adding 2 fruits a day. Like, build on it, keep working on it. Animal protein is okay. We don't just have to get rid of all of our animal protein. It's a decent source of protein, but let's go with our lean cuts. Let's go with our fish more readily. Red meat, I don't want you to do that every day, but if you have it once a week or so, it's not the worst thing. But you do want to make sure you're going with leaner cuts so that you're getting rid of a lot of that saturated fat. And then our dairy, you want to go with low fat dairy, just to streamline that saturated fat. Managing stress is always really important. And remember, we have those upcoming studies that are dealing with sleep disturbance and yoga. Those are things that kind of all fall into that managing stress category. Staying physically active, there it is again. And that probiotic and increasing fiber. These are your takeaways. These are what you should be thinking about that you can improve today. Just a reminder, some of the services that we have here at Lynn, whether you're pre-surgery, whether you're on treatment, you're post-treatment, and any of our post-treatment, you can see a registered dietitian or be included in any of our programs if you've been treated within the last year. So it's 1 year past your final treatment, including immunotherapy, chemotherapy, or radiation, okay, or surgery, okay? And that's all I have. I hope that you will incorporate something into your journey, and I hope that we have helped today to really enhance your journey by including some form of exercise and nutrition. And don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions. We're here for you.
Yes, you are. I will attest to that. So unfortunately, we apologize to our audience because that's something that literally has never happened before. We've had little pauses, but this looked like it was a full shutdown of our system here at Baptist. So luckily, these presentations are recorded, and so everyone will get a copy of it. And if you have questions, you have mine and Lee's email address. You can just send us your question. And Brandy, that was amazing. And I'm so glad that I try to encourage people other than breast cancer patients or survivors to come on because the information is so vital for all of us. And your research was so amazing that I feel like we should be getting CEUs for this. It was very in depth and very presented in such a way that even us, non-clinical people can totally understand everything that you gave to us. So thank you for all the time and effort that you put into the presentation.